the board approval is technically a trade by trade requirement, so that each trade has to be approved by the board in terms of getting to the end user exemption. The notion being that you have to communicate that I'm not doing this trade as a matter of speculation. I'm doing this trade as a matter of hedging risk. So and I know you've recently been working with companies. What have you seen in terms of how companies are documenting that for the board?
Well, there's the regulatory requirement. I think that's what you're touching upon. The
Yep,
regulatory
yep.
requirement. Few people would care to disagree with this. It seems to suggest that the board needs to approve a number of things on a trade-by-trade basis, including the appropriateness of the derivative for the purpose in which it's being used. The board needs to approve on a trade-by-trade basis, a derivative-by-derivative basis, how the company is going to financially support that derivative on a going-forward basis. And the board needs to, on a trade-by-trade basis, approve if the company is declaring themselves an end user and availing themselves of the end user exemption. The rules indicate that the board needs to approve these 3 points on a trade-by-trade basis. Having said that, as a practical matter, especially for companies that execute more than 1 or 2 or 3 derivatives a year, getting the board together to actually approve, and whether that be together in person or together on the phone or together by email, getting them together in a timely manner to approve derivatives on a transaction-by-transaction basis is not practical. And I think that all of the corporate end users that we've had conversations with have expressed some concerns about the fact that the regulation has this requirement. Having said that, they are approaching it in a much more practical manner in which they are putting in front of their boards policies that prescribe exactly what they use the derivatives for, how they will use those derivatives, how they will support those derivatives financially, and the rationale behind why they're going to declare themselves an end user if that's what their intention is, such that the board is in a position where they won't need to necessarily, in the eyes of the organization, on a transaction-by-transaction basis, formally approve each transaction individually, because what they've done is the board has gotten to a point where they understand what does the company use that particular type of derivative for, how's the company going to support it, why is the end user exemption appropriate, and therefore, unless the company deviates from those particular products or that particular fact pattern, they won't need to come back on a transaction-by-transaction basis. They can continue to proceed with their derivative execution and clearing, knowing that the board has approved that particular type of trade under those circumstances.
Yeah, but to that point, right? If the response to the board requirement to approve transactions on a trade-by-trade basis is to construct, I won't say a blanket approval, but a recurring approval within a policy window or within a policy construct, that requires some board education to come with, I will approve you within these bounds, right? So to your point earlier about this is a board education topic, board approval is needed. And as a technical matter, I think the way we're understanding that it's being applied in the regulation, it's on a trade-by-trade basis. To move past that as a practical matter, to have some workable solution of a sort of recurring, maybe annual approval of a policy or a framework for you have standing approval within this framework, that requires a fair amount of board education up front to agree the framework. To be fair, it's consistent with existing Treasury policies which have always sought board approval. This is a little bit more focused and a little bit more granular.